Guess what? I think the Ninja just died. It's not turning on. I think it killed it. Welcome to the channel. Today, let's make a classic cookie gluten-free. Or is it fruit and cake? Let's make gluten-free Fig Newtons. I'm Jamie with SavorySaver. I share gluten-free recipes, tips, tricks, and resources to make your gluten-free lifestyle easier. So please consider hitting subscribe, and let's get started. Okay guys, gluten-free Fig Newtons. Can I say I think that's probably the only way I've ever had a fig is in Fig Newtons? Maybe in something else once or twice in my life. So I've never bought them before. Guess what? They're right there near the raisins. So I needed 2 bags of them. This is what they look like if you don't know what they look like. And they do have little stems. I'll show you what to do with those when we get to that part of the recipe. If you guys are like me, when you want to make something gluten-free, the first thing you probably do is head over to the web and hit gluten-free whatever or gluten-free whatever recipe. That's what I did. I came up with 5 or 6 recipes when I was looking at them, and I picked the one from beyondflour.com. Part of the reason I did that was because I had most everything except for the figs on hand. The other reason I did that is because some of the recipes coming up for me were keto or healthier, and nothing wrong with any of those recipes, but I didn't want to use maple syrup. I was going to use refined sugar. So if you're looking for more of the healthy recipes that have some of those things in it, definitely Google it that way and use one of those recipes. Today we are baking by volume. So everything is cups and teaspoons and tablespoons and all that mess. So you don't need a scale unless you want to weigh out your figs. I did have to buy 2 bags of figs, and they were 7-ounce bags. I needed 12 ounces. So there's a couple to snack on and to try if you've not tried it before. As we go through the recipe, I've read it over a few times, but not quite enough because evidently they are best eaten next day. So while I'm making them today, I haven't decided if I'm trying them today or tomorrow. So we'll see by the end of the video, because I guess texture is a little better, which makes sense because it's a cakey texture, and if they're more like cookies today, they need time to absorb some moisture. Also, we will go over anything in the recipe that I have changed or that I think should be tweaked a little bit. I do not consider myself a pro when it comes to writing recipes, but there are things that I try to cut corners on when I can, or I change up a little bit just because it makes sense for me. We'll go over that stuff as usual. You guys seem to like when I do that because it helps with explanations or problem solving when you make stuff yourself. Okay, enough yapping from me. Let's get started. For the recipe, I did not see anything difficult in the directions. Everything looks pretty straightforward. So we're gonna start with making the cookie mix. This has to chill for an hour, so let's start with that, and then we'll move on to the filling. So there's a few steps involved, but I don't think we'll have any issues with making everything until probably I get to rolling out cookies. You guys know how that goes with me. So I am using the stand mixer, but I will say in looking at this, I think you could totally use a hand mixer, or if you really wanna get that workout, then you can do it by hand. So I've got 1/2 cup of unsalted butter, room temperature. I also have a 1/4 cup of granulated sugar and a 1/4 cup of brown sugar. I've got my paddle attachment, and I'm going to beat it until it is light and fluffy. So let's cream that together and scrape the bowls as needed. All right, guys, I think we're probably pretty good. Let's see. Still a little bit of grittiness from the sugar, but it's been going for about 4 minutes. So I think I'm gonna call it good. Often the longer you can go, the better with creaming something, because you kind of want to dissolve that sugar into the butter. So don't be afraid to go a little bit longer with it than you think. The only time it would make a difference, I think, is if we were incorporating too much air into it. But usually with creaming, not a problem. And you definitely want to go longer if your butter is a little warmer, because it's not going to cream into the sugar as well if it's not a good temperature. For the rest of the wet ingredients, I'm going to add 1 large egg, room temperature. You'll get better mix. The next thing going in here is some orange juice. So for the recipes I looked at, some of them had orange juice and orange zest. Some of them had lemon juice in them. This recipe only had orange in it. So I'm using the cuties because that's what we have. It's a nice sweet orange taste. It'll be just fine. The recipe calls for half of an orange zested for the cookies as well as half of an orange zested for the filling. So I've got 2 of these because I'm going to consider one of these zested as half an orange. So I'll show you how I zest it in just a minute just to make sure that I don't get any of that white pith. But I am going to add the zest of the first one right in there, as well as a tablespoon of the juice. Finally, I'm gonna add a teaspoon of vanilla extract, and if you guys know me, you know I have my own made. Now, I'm gonna beat everything again until it's fully incorporated and smooth. All right, scrape the bowl down. Everything looks nice and smooth at this point. Do you guys see my new scraper? We got together with our friends this weekend, and they live in Colorado, but they were in town down at the coast, which is about 3 hours from us. And so we hung out with them, and they have a Buc-ee's now in Colorado. So they brought some gifts for us and for Oliver. And if you guys want to check out, they also have a YouTube channel. So check them out if you're looking for a new channel to start watching. They are not a food channel, but I actually tell them on a regular basis that I find their videos relaxing. All right, let's slide this to the side for just a minute and get our dry ingredients made, and then we'll incorporate everything together. Okay, for the dry mix, it's not a whole lot. It's a couple cups of dry ingredients. So the recipe says a large bowl. I actually grabbed one of my smaller bowls because I just need enough to get everything in the bowl and give it a whisk. So for the recipe, we are using 4 individual gluten-free flours, and I will say in looking at these, I do not know an all-purpose gluten-free flour blend will work, and I'll tell you why in just a second. So for the flours, we have a half cup of white rice flour, a half cup of sorghum flour, a quarter cup of millet flour, which I think is this one, and a quarter cup of coconut flour. Everything is Bob's Red Mill except for the coconut flour. I honestly don't remember what brand that is because I don't use this a ton. So I will link below to the Bob's Red Mill stuff as well as 1 or 2 coconut flour options that look affordable if you are looking for that. Speaking of the coconut flour, I do not know if this recipe is going to work with an all-purpose gluten-free flour blend with xanthan gum because coconut flour, from what I understand, is a high absorption gluten-free flour. So it absorbs a lot more liquid than some of the other flours. And I don't usually see this in gluten-free flour blends. So if you try that with a gluten-free flour blend, then just understand it may or may not work. Sometimes I say swap it out, I think it'll be good. This one I'm not so sure on. Okay, so the remaining dry ingredients, a tablespoon of tapioca starch, a half teaspoon of fine salt, and a half teaspoon of baking powder. Let's give that a whisk. All right, everything's whisked. I broke up any lumps in the flours. Let's get incorporated. Okay, we are gonna slowly add the dry mix to the wet mix, and you want to mix it until it's well incorporated and smooth. So let's see if I can do this without getting it all over me. Start off slow to get everything incorporated, then you can pick up the pace. All right, guys. Everything's in here and it looks like it's mixing really well. I'm gonna pick up the pace in just a minute and then definitely scrape the bowl once or twice as it mixes because I can see some of the dry ingredients wanting to stick to the bottom of the bowl. So let's get this all incorporated and mixed smooth. All right, guys, I think this looks really good. So I'm gonna get it out of this bowl and I'm actually gonna transfer it to the other bowl that I was using because we need to chill this and I just want it in a smaller bowl so I can clean my KitchenAid up. So let me get this scraped off into the smaller bowl and we'll take a closer look at it before I cover it up. All right, guys, here's the dough and I really like the consistency of it. It is definitely a cookie dough consistency. So great job on that part of the recipe as far as I'm concerned. I am very excited about this. It does need to chill. The recipe says for an hour. I am probably going to go longer because I'm going to make the filling. That needs to cool, and it's around lunchtime when I'm filming this. So let's get this covered up into the fridge. We're going to make the filling next. All right, guys, let's talk figs. Again, I just got these at the grocery store over with the dried fruit. I did need 2 bags of them because we need 12 ounces, and these are 7-ounce bags. So when you open the figs, lots of them have this little stem on here. So I just pulled it off. You don't need it. So compost it, toss it in the trash, whatever you want to do with it. The filling recipe says to finely chop the figs. After it's cooked, we're processing it anyway. So I'm just going to let the processor do the work for the chopping. So I'm just going to pulse it until it looks finely chopped. So once you pulled off all the stems, into the processor, lid on. These are super sticky, so I did notice I was getting it on my hands when I was taking the stems off. So hopefully it does okay and not sticking to the blade too much. Guess what? I think the Ninja just died. It's not turning on. I think it killed it. So let me open this up and see how much hand chopping I need to do. All right, guys. So from what I can tell, the Ninja is not working. It's pretty old. We've had it for a long, long time, probably 10 years plus at least. So I'm gonna try to chop it off with my knife, and I'm still gonna have to process it. So I've got another food processor, so we'll get that out. So for now, let's see if I can chop this up. I'm gonna try it just with the knife, and if it gets to give me a fit, I might just try a little bit of oil on the knife to hopefully help keep any sticking to a minimum. Okay guys, so I'm just doing an up and down motion with the entire knife and pressing down as evenly as I can. And it actually is doing a really good job at it. So maybe if you're making these, cut them up with a knife so you don't burn out the motor in your food processor. And then we are gonna process it down, like I said, but there's gonna be some liquid in here. So I don't think we're gonna have any issues with it on round 2. All right, we're pretty finely chopped, I think. So this is a do as I say, not as I do moment. Use the knife and not your food processor. I'm gonna transfer all my figs to this pot back here. Hopefully it's big enough. Okay, everything's in the pot. I think I'm gonna be okay size-wise with my small pot. Let's get the rest of the ingredients in here. You want the zest of half an orange. So again, I'm gonna use all the zest from this cutie because it's probably about the size of half an orange. The way I like to zest, whether it be an orange or lemon or lime or whatever I'm zesting, is I always use one of these rasps, and I do it upside down, and I literally do 1 or 2 pulls across it just to get that very outer coating of the zest. So it's just lighter. Once I scrape that little bit off, I move to the next part. So maybe 3 swipes. And if your zester is sharp enough, and I've had this for years, then you should be fine. Okay, so there's all the zest. Now we had some juice in the cookie base. I'm also gonna juice this one. So let's see how much juice this put out from this one, as well as I had a little bit left from the other one, I think. Okay, so for this, I have about 1 ounce of juice, about 6 teaspoons, 2 tablespoons, and for the pot, I actually need 1/3 cup of water. So instead of me wasting this juice or drinking it, I'm gonna use it in the pot. Now, it might strengthen the orange flavor with the figs, but I'm okay with that. If you don't wanna do that, use straight water, but I might as well use the juice for this and not have to worry with doing something else with it. So let's fill it up to what I need. 1/3 cup is like 3 ounces or 5 tablespoons. Let's add that to the pot. Finally, we're gonna add just a pinch of salt, just to balance out flavor, of course. Let's move over to the stove. Everything is on the stove and I'm mixing it up. I've got the heat on to medium high. And what I'm gonna do is, it says you to boil it and then cover it and remove it from the heat. So there's not really a lot of moisture in it. So I don't think it's really gonna boil per se. It's sizzling good though. So let's give it about a minute and then I'll take it off the heat. All right guys, I've let this cook for a minute. I've turned off the heat. I'm gonna cover it and let it sit for 10 minutes, maybe a little longer. And then we're gonna process it. So while this waits, we're gonna jump you ahead and I'm gonna do a little bit of cleanup. Okay guys, check it out. I washed it, let it dry, look. So I don't know if it was the figs being too sticky or too full or what, but we're gonna see if I can process these figs now. Okay guys, in true Jamie fashion, I read the directions at least twice and still missed part of the directions. Once this sat for 10 minutes covered, you were supposed to add the zest and the salt. I added it with the cooking time. I'm not gonna worry about it. I think it's gonna be fine. Just make sure you always read your directions 2-3 times before you start a recipe and you won't have issues like I do. Hopefully this is gonna process for us, and to be safe, I'm gonna do it about half at a time and I'll just transfer it to a bowl. So let's get this processed. All right guys, this is what I'm looking for. It is super smooth, just almost like a paste. So I'm gonna double check this, make sure it's where I want it, process the other half, and then we'll take a closer look at it. So here's the other half of our fig paste. And when I was processing it, the one thing I tried to make sure of is that it was super smooth. And how I did that was, if you've ever made any kind of dough in a food processor, it will start sticking together in its own like ball almost in the food processor. That's when I decided to continue to check it and make sure it was pulsed down to what I wanted to. I did do probably 20-second pulses on the machine because I was afraid that if it was the motor having an issue the first time I used it, I didn't want that motor overheating. So it looks like it's a nice smooth paste, and we're gonna be piping this, so you definitely want it smooth. And I'm mixing it together just because I did it in 2 batches. It'll kind of distribute whichever one wasn't quite as smooth. Let's put this to the side for just a minute, and I gotta get that dough out. We gotta start rolling it. This is gonna be piped, so I need to figure out what I'm doing with that. So let's keep moving. Before I even start baking, let me tell you the plan. So I've got my silicone mat down because we need to roll this dough out, and then we actually have to fold it in on itself, and I can roll it up with the help of this. You're gonna need cookie sheets that are lined with parchment paper. So I've got 2. I think that'll be enough for the dough. I also have a cake pan because that's what they suggested for putting the cookies in after they come out of the oven, because after we bake these, they're gonna be immediately removed from that cookie sheet into this and then covered with plastic wrap so they can steam and soften up. We are gonna bake these in the oven at 375 degrees Fahrenheit, and I've not turned the oven on yet just because I don't know how long it's gonna take me to roll the first set of these out. So I'm gonna roll the first set out and see where I'm at, and then I'll probably turn the oven on at that point. So I've got our fig paste here, and it does say to divide it up into 4 and put it in a piping bag. I've got all of it in here, guys. I'm not gonna keep transferring it to a piping bag because I think I'm gonna have a mess. So hopefully I can eyeball it to get through all the cookies, and it is pretty thick, so expect it to be a little difficult to pipe out, but we'll see. You're gonna want the hole in your piping bag to be about a 1/2 inch. That's what this measures out in, so I'm not gonna put any kind of tip on it. And of course, if you don't have a piping bag, use a heavy duty zip top bag. Here's a 1/4 of the dough. I actually did weigh it out just so I can hopefully be even on my rolling and my cookie sizes. So I've got the other 3 balls in the fridge staying cold so that butter stays firm. We're gonna roll these out in cornstarch to help with any sticking. So I thought this would be a good idea. I've got a small sieve and a bowl. That way there I can sift it out over the top and not have any clumps of cornstarch. All right, we want to generously sprinkle our cornstarch. I don't know if that's too much or not enough, but we're going to try with that. And then we're going to make it about 4 inches wide by about 12 inches long. So I'm going to shape it some before I even put it on the board. And Fig Newtons are square, so I'm going to try to get it into a square shape. Or a rectangle, I guess. I also think I'm just going to put a little bit on the top, hopefully to help with sticking. All right, we're looking for 4 by 12. So far it's rolling good, and I am gonna add more cornstarch if I notice any sticking. And I'm also gonna square it up a little bit as I go. All right, guys, so I'm at 12 inches long, but I'm about 5 inches wide. So I'm gonna push everything in a little bit. I'm gonna try to do about a 1/2 inch in on each side. This is also gonna help square up that dough. All right, guys, I am pleased with that. It rolled out really nicely, actually. On the next round, will have to be more careful about my width because it actually stretched out really nice. All right, now I'm gonna take my filling and kind of estimate 1/4 of it. And I want to pipe it right down the center, a thick line all the way down as flat as I can make it. So maybe if you have one of those flat tips, to use that. I probably should have weighed this out too. Then I would know how much to use, but too late now. So we need this to be about 1 inch wide. So I've got a spoon and a butter knife. We'll see which one works better. I'm going to try with the butter knife first. Maybe I can the flattening seems to work pretty well. Let's try with the spoon. It's a little sticky, so let's see if water helps. Oh yeah, that makes it good. It's not sticking. So spoon seems to be working better. If it helps with the knife as well. It does. So I would take a little bowl of water, dip whatever utensil in you're using, even if it's a offset spatula, and then you want to spread it out, and you want it to be about 1 inch wide. All right, guys, I gotta say that wasn't super difficult at all. So now we need to fold the dough over the filling, which is why I think this mat came in handy. Although it is going to throw some of that on there too. So let's see if we can do it without it first. Not too bad. Push your dough back together if you need to. Same thing with the other side. That cornstarch is definitely helping, so don't skimp on that. We're forming a tube, so I'm going to try to press it together. Now, we're going to make sure we can lift it off of here. Now the next part of the recipe says to actually flip it over and then slice it into cookies about 1.5 inches long. I think I'm gonna flip it over as I move it over to the cookie sheet because I feel like that's a better option than flipping it, cutting it, flipping, moving it. I just wanna do everything once. So I think I'm gonna cut it this way, but we want to right side up everything once it gets over there. So let's push this together a little bit. I also think I'm going to get a brush and brush off any excess cornstarch. So let's see how this goes. All right, guys, about 1.5 inches. So And then the end one's gonna be a little bit bigger because it's a little long. So let's move them. All right, guys, I've got you backed up a little bit because of the camera angle. I'm gonna brush off the cornstarch a little bit. Gosh, these actually look like Fig Newtons. I'm very excited. All right, let's turn on the oven, 375 degrees, and start heating it up because it really didn't take me that long. So I think I'm gonna do that, and then I guess I need to decide if I'm baking one pan at a time or two. All right, guys, those are looking good. So let me roll out the rest. There's still plenty of cornstarch down, so I'm not gonna put any additional yet. Maybe after this batch. Let's get another thing of dough out. All right, again, I'm gonna shape it, roll it, and let's jump you guys ahead so you don't need to see the process all over again because it's gonna take me a few minutes to do. And if I need to, I'll jump back in and give you any tips, or I will tell you what I did in just a second. All right, guys, I already have a tip. All I did was roll it back and forth, pushed it together once, rolled it back and forth. I'm at my 12 inches by my 4 inches. So roll long, and then if you do it thin enough, it should come out to about the 4. All right, guys, the third batch is all rolled out. It's going really, really quickly. I love how this dough is coming together. So let's start baking our first pan. I am gonna put 4 more on here. So we're gonna bake these 375 degrees Fahrenheit for 12 to 15 minutes. It does say lightly golden and do not overbake. So I'm gonna check it at the 12-minute mark and see where we're at. I'm hoping by then I should have the final dough rolled out. So as soon as these come out of the oven, we can transfer them to that cake pan. Look at these. They look really good. This has only been the 12 minutes. This one's actually a little dark, but these are all just starting to turn golden. So I think they're done. So I'm gonna move them over to this cake pan. I'm pretty impressed with those. Other than I should have put a little more filling in them, I think. And since these are gonna steam, I think I can probably put them right up next to each other. Okay, round one's in the pan. It says to cover them and then let them steam and cool for at least 30 minutes. It does say overnight. I don't know if we're gonna let them go that long though, guys. All right, I can already see the steam building on the plastic wrap. I'm gonna let these cool. I will add the next pan to it in a minute, and then after 30 minutes at some point, we're gonna give these a try. Probably today, maybe tomorrow. We'll be right back. All right, guys, here are the finished Fig Newtons. And I was gonna wait until tomorrow to try them, but they've been sitting for just over an hour now, so I'm gonna try them now. And if I have to pop in tomorrow with a little segment, we'll do that. So let's start by taking a close look at the cookie. That's one side of it, that's the other. The top is slightly golden, the bottom is nice and golden. I really liked how well this recipe came together. As I got through the quarters of the dough, I got better and better at rolling it, filling it, and just shaping the cookie. It was not a difficult dough to work with. Really like that. The filling was easy if I'd followed directions a little closer, but it still came out really good. I did have extra, so next time I would fill these cookies just a little bit more. The cornstarch on the board did wonders for it not sticking. Very good recipe in regards to the instructions for the most part, as well as how easily it went together. I am gonna try, I think, this one. It's one of the odd shaped ones. I think it was from the first or second roll. So we're gonna try that one. They look like Fig Newtons, pretty much. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, they're not exact, but mass produced is much different than homemade most of the time. So this actually is just the cake itself. So let's just try that by itself. I like the little bit of orange in it. The texture is pretty good. There's a little bit of grit in there, but nothing horrible, nothing that I would say is a bad thing. As as far as a reason not to make it. The orange actually gives it really good flavor. That's pretty good. There's a better look at the fig filling in there. Those are good. Those taste like Fig Newtons. I really like the filling. I will say, with the filling, the little fig seeds, the part that you get that little bit of texture like in the original, that helps with a little bit of grittiness from the first bite I took, so it's barely noticeable now. I like those. I really like the orange in it. If you like lemons better than oranges, or you have a lemon and don't have an orange, I would probably just swap them out equally. It's going to give you a lemony taste instead of an orangey taste, but I don't think there's anything that would hurt that one bit. I'm going to have another one. Let's have this other one. I do really like how golden they got on the bottom because they're cooked. That piece went on the floor. Okay, I've now had two. Let's go over a few final things with this recipe. One, I would make it in stages. Make your filling. You could even do this the day before if you didn't want to do everything. I don't see why you couldn't make the dough the day before as well as the filling. It is a little bit time consuming only because it was my first time and I filmed, so when I'm filming, it takes me longer to do anything because I have to correct myself or make sure I'm remembering to give you guys information. So it did take me hours to do this, and then some time in between where I cleaned and had lunch and all that kind of stuff. But it wasn't difficult. So the first time, if it takes you a little bit of time but you like the recipe, definitely make it again. The rolling got super easy after I did the first couple. It wasn't difficult. I didn't have to edit out any cussing, which, you know, sometimes I have to do that when I'm rolling dough. Easy ingredients, guys. Nothing difficult. I did like the blend of flour that it used. I still don't know about switching out the flour blend in this recipe for a gluten-free 1-to-1. It's definitely worth trying, but just understand that coconut flour has a high absorption rate. The texture of it was cookie dough through and through. I did not see any difference between a regular dough and this gluten-free dough as far as the cookie base. Directions were easy to follow. Ingredients, there was nothing difficult, but I will link down below to the flours as well as maybe some figs, just in case you can't find them in the store. No special equipment. I really do think that you could do this with a regular hand mixer or by hand if you want that workout in creaming the butter and the sugar. Guys, I think that's all I have for today because I don't have anything else to say about them. Great recipe. Definitely think it's worth trying. And I think I may try it again or make some tweaks and maybe do some other kind of filling. We shall see. Leave your comments and questions below. I will try to help you to the best of my ability. If it's something you want to email me, that information is in my YouTube homepage, so you can seek me out there. Good recipe, so definitely check out beyondflour.com. I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, I hope to see you in the next video.